New York never sleeps, but that night I wanted to disappear. The mirrored glass of the penthouse reflected my restless silhouette as I watched the city below. I was the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the country, and in that moment, I felt less like an heiress and more like a prisoner. The first time I saw Ethan Carter, my new bodyguard, I felt an unexpected shiver. Not because he was like the others, sycophants, easy to bend, but because unlike them, he didn't look away when our eyes met. He studied me as if searching for something, and when his expression closed into an impenetrable mask, I realized I wanted to know what he was hiding too. I lived surrounded by luxury, cold marble, crystal chandeliers, artworks worth more than some small towns, but lately everything felt like a gilded cage. The threat against me was no longer a whispering rumor in the halls of my father's company. It was real. An anonymous note left in my driver's car, a phone call with a distorted voice saying I should be careful, and then the security detail doubled, the cameras tripled, and the penthouse where I lived became a bunker. And now I had him. Ethan Carter. Tall, broad-shouldered, always dressed in black. His gaze was sharp as a blade, a deep blue that seemed to see beyond what I let on. He was different from all the security guards who had come through here, silent, reserved, and yet present. As if he wasn't just protecting a target, but something that truly mattered to him. I should have felt safe, but with him, I felt something else. Something that made me catch my breath whenever he entered the same room. He never tried to please, never asked unnecessary questions, never allowed himself a slip, but I noticed the little things. The way his eyes followed me when I thought he wasn't looking, the subtle tension in his jaw whenever I got too close, the way his fingers brushed against the gun in his holster every time someone new approached me. He didn't trust anyone, and somehow that made me want to trust him. He will follow you everywhere, no exceptions. My father warned while signing a contract at the conference table in our penthouse. He's the best at what he does, and believe me, daughter, you need the best. Ethan didn't respond at all. He just stood there, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on some point on the wall. As if all of this was a necessary annoyance, I decided to test him. And what happens if I want to escape him? I asked, leaning back in the chair, crossing my legs slowly, watching his reaction. If it had been anyone else, they would have become uncomfortable. They would have tried for a smile to please me. But Ethan just turned his face in my direction, his gaze locking onto mine with raw intensity. You won't. The silence that followed was heavy. My heart raced, and I couldn't tell if it was out of fear or among something else. It was in that moment that I knew. He wasn't there just because of a contract, and somehow that changed everything. Ethan Carter was a shadow. He was always there, behind me in the company hallways, beside me in the elevator, a few steps back when I entered a restaurant. I could feel him before I even saw him, a solid, constant presence, and completely unreachable. He never spoke beyond what was necessary, never tried to make small talk, never broke the rigid posture of absolute professionalism, and that was driving me crazy. I was used to being noticed. Ever since I could remember, the men around me did everything to get my attention. Little smiles, exaggerated compliments, disguised touches in casual greetings. But Ethan, nothing. And maybe that was exactly what made me think so much about him. At dinner that night, I almost wanted something to go out of control. Something that would make him react. It was an important event for my father's company. Investors, businessmen, strategic alliances I needed to cultivate. I wore a tight black dress with thin straps, and I knew I was drawing attention. But the only attention I wanted was his. Ethan was close enough to react to anything, but far enough to pretend he wasn't part of my world. His eyes scanned the room, always alert, and I wondered if he really wasn't looking at me, or if he did when I wasn't watching. So, have you thought about my proposal? The voice of the man sitting next to me pulled me from my thoughts. Michael Lambert, in his 40s, CEO of a tech company that was growing too fast. One of those men who liked to feel powerful. He smiled, and the gleam in his eyes made it clear that his proposal went beyond business. I think we still need to discuss the details, I replied, keeping my voice firm but cordial. "Of course, we can schedule a more private dinner." His hand slid across the table, resting near mine. But before he could move closer, something happened. A strange commotion in the room, a waiter bumping into a guest. Nothing that seemed truly alarming, but Ethan noticed before anyone else. Before I could blink, he was already by my side. The chair next to me scraped loudly as he moved swiftly, positioning himself between me and the rest of the room. The shift was subtle, but lethal. He didn't touch me, but it was as if he was surrounding me. It happened too quickly to understand what was going on. I saw a man on the other side of the room being subdued by the event's security. Someone screamed. My heart raced. But what captivated me most wasn't what was happening around us. It was the way Ethan looked at me. His body was tense, jaw clenched, his gaze sharp and dark. And for the first time I saw, it wasn't just professionalism, it wasn't just instinct. He would have died for me there, without hesitation. A chill ran down my spine. I didn't know what was more frightening, the danger outside or the way Ethan Carter made me feel. A rainy night, an interrupted conversation, and a secret that Ethan tries to hide. What does he not want her to discover? And more importantly, why does he care so much? The rain battered the windows of the penthouse, forming small rivers on the glass as the city glowed in diffused neon. I should have been sleeping, but my mind was restless. Since dinner, something had changed. I could see Ethan moving around the room, his silent footsteps revealing that he was, as always, alert. His silhouette was just a shadow in the reflection of the glass, but I knew he was there. He always was, and then without thinking much I called for him. "Ethan." He stopped. He didn't turn immediately. We were stuck in that heavy silence for a few seconds before he moved, walking toward me. "You should be sleeping, and you should sit down." I crossed my arms, lifting one foot onto the sofa, or at least pretend you're not made of stone for 5 minutes. He didn't respond, but his eyes slid over me, too quick for me to catch any emotion in them. "Why did you accept this job?" I blurted out. If he was surprised by the question, he didn't show it, because it was assigned to me. Lie. I tilted my head, studying his expression. "You could have refused. I know you have choices, Ethan, and yet, you're here." He fell silent. The sound of the rain seemed to fill the space between us. "This is personal for you, isn't it?" I pressed. This time the tension became visible. His jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists at his sides. "What happened?" I asked, softer now. He hesitated. I saw his throat move as he swallowed. "You don't want to know." "I do." "No?" His voice came out lower, but firm. "You don't want to." For a second I thought he would say something more. His gaze met mine, and there was something there. Something raw. Something that seemed ready to explode. But before I could press further, a sound cut through the moment, a sharp noise coming from the hallway. We both turned at the same time. My heart raced. Ethan already had his gun in hand before I could react. The look he shot me was a warning. "Stay. Here." But I knew I wouldn't be able to. Something was happening. And this time, I felt it was different. The danger intensified, and an attack occurred when she least expected it. Ethan hurriedly pulled her out of there, and in the midst of the adrenaline, something between them changed. He couldn't touch her, but he wanted to, and now she knew it. The noise came again. A dry crack, something metallic hitting the marble floor of the hallway. My heart raced. Ethan was already moving before I could react. His body positioned itself between me and the living room door, his posture tense, gun steady in his hands. He said nothing. He didn't need to. His silence was an order. "Don't move." But I moved, because standing still had never been my strong suit. Before I could take another step, he turned his face in my direction, his eyes burning with frustration. "I told you to stay here." His voice was low but cutting, and I said, "I'm not made of glass." A low curse escaped between his teeth, but he knew arguing with me wouldn't help, so, with no other choice, he grabbed my wrist and pulled me behind him. And then, chaos began. The door was kicked in. 2 hooded men rushed in, guns drawn, but Ethan was already ready. The shots were muffled by the silencer, but I felt the impact of the action like a punch to the stomach. One of the men fell immediately. The other hesitated for a second, enough time for Ethan to move forward. Everything happened too fast. A precise strike, a calculated move. In seconds, both were on the ground. The silence that followed was deafening. My body was trembling, my heart racing. The smell of gunpowder and adrenaline filled the air. Ethan turned to me, his eyes wild with intensity. "Are you okay?" His voice was hoarse. I tried to respond, but my breath was short, my lips parted, my body still overtaken by adrenaline. He dropped the gun and held my face in his hands. My heart leaped. His fingers were warm against my skin, his breath still quick. I saw his throat move as he swallowed, his gaze sliding from my eyes to my mouth. For a moment, I forgot the danger. I forgot about the men on the floor. I forgot everything. It was just him. And then, in a moment of clarity, Ethan released my face and stepped back. It was so quick that it left a cold emptiness in the place where his hands had been. He blinked a few times as if trying to collect himself. "We have to get out of here now." I didn't argue, but as we ran through the building and got into the car, one thing became clear to me. Ethan Carter might be trying to fight it, but he wanted to touch me. And now I knew it. Trapped in an improvised hideout, she confessed that she had never trusted anyone like she trusted him. Ethan revealed that he was protecting her for more than just duty. An almost kiss happened, but he pulled back. He can't. He shouldn't. The hideout was a secluded cabin away from the city, small, quiet, surrounded by trees swaying in the night wind. The smell of damp wood and wet earth mingled with the air, thick with tension. We were on the run, and for the first time, completely alone. Ethan locked the door behind us, checking every corner of the place. I watched him in silence, the muscles rigid under his dark shirt, his eyes scanning the environment with calculated precision. He was always in control, but that night, something about him felt different. I could still feel the warmth of his hands on my face, the weight of his gaze after he held me on that rooftop. He couldn't erase that. Neither could I. "Are you okay?" His voice cut through the silence, a tone lower than usual. I nodded, but it wasn't entirely the truth. I was alive, yes. But my heart was still racing, not just because of the attack. "I've never trusted anyone the way I trust you." The words slipped out before I could think them through. Ethan stopped. He stood still for a few seconds, his back tense, as if he were trying to process what I had just said. "That's a mistake," he finally replied, turning to me. "Why?" He ran a hand through his hair, looking frustrated. "Because I can't be that person for you." "Then why do you look at me like that?" The silence that followed was electric. Ethan closed his eyes for a second, as if he were holding himself together. When he opened them again, his eyes were darker, more intense. I moved closer. "Do you feel anything for me, Ethan?" My voice came out lower, hesitant. He took a deep breath. His chest rose and fell in a controlled manner, as if every muscle in his body was resisting something he couldn't allow. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." I raised my hand and slowly touched his face. He stiffened under my touch. My heart was racing, and I felt his warm breath against my skin. For a moment he didn't pull away. Then Ethan lowered his gaze to my mouth, and I knew. My entire body burned with anticipation, the tension between us thick, impossible to ignore. Then he pulled away, abruptly, as if he had just woken from a trance. That was a mistake. His voice was almost a whisper, laden with something that felt like pain. I stood there, my heart breaking for no apparent reason. "Why?" My voice faltered. He opened his mouth, but before he could respond, a sound from outside the cabin cut through the air. Footsteps. Ethan reacted instantly, grabbing the gun and positioning himself between me and the door. The moment we had disappeared. The danger was still there, and now closer than ever. The tension exploded. It challenged him, asking if he felt anything for her. Ethan tried to resist, but when she touched him again, he could no longer hold back. The kiss happened, intense, urgent, forbidden. But before they could lose themselves in each other, he pulled away, murmuring that it was a mistake. The storm raged outside, thunder tearing through the sky as rain pounded the cabin roof. But in here, the real chaos was between us. Ethan had the gun pointed at the door, his body tense as a wire ready to snap. I could barely breathe, every muscle rigid with anticipation. The footsteps stopped. Seconds of absolute silence. Then, a metallic sound, the latch being tested from outside. Ethan moved before I could blink. He opened the door suddenly, catching the intruder by surprise. A crack, a precise blow, and the body collapsed to the ground. "It's okay," he exhaled, staying alert. "It was just a scout. Someone came to check if we were here. We need to leave before they come back." But I couldn't process that. I couldn't focus on the danger outside when the real danger was right in front of me. Him. His breathing was still heavy, his chest rising and falling. I knew he was trying to ignore what had happened earlier, pretending that the moment between us meant nothing. But I wasn't going to let that happen. "Why do you always pull away?" My voice came out firmer than I expected. Ethan didn't answer. He just ran a hand over his face as if trying to find patience. "Answer me, Ethan." I stepped forward. He backed away, but only slightly. "If you don't feel anything, say it now. Look me in the eyes and tell me." He stared at me. I saw the internal struggle there, the conflict between the man trained to protect and the man who wanted to give in. The tension was unbearable. And then I touched him. My hands landed on his chest, feeling the firm muscles beneath his shirt. I felt the subtle tremor in his body, as if he were on the edge of self-control. "You can't keep pretending." My voice came out in a whisper. Ethan closed his eyes for a second, and when he opened them again, something in them had changed. And then it happened, the moment I knew would come. He pulled me to him, his mouth taking mine with an urgency that set my entire body ablaze. The kiss wasn't gentle, it wasn't careful, it was intense. It was a collapse, a surrender, an explosion contained for too long. His hands slid around my waist, pulling me closer, and I felt the tension in him, as if he knew it was wrong but was unable to stop. I gripped the back of his neck, deepening the kiss, wanting more, wanting everything. And then he pulled away, too quickly, as if he had been burned. No. His voice was a hoarse whisper, his breath unsteady. That was a mistake. I felt the emptiness where his body had been just seconds ago. "Not for me." My voice faltered. He closed his eyes, running his hands through his hair. When he spoke again, his voice was cold. "It can't happen again." But I already knew. He could fight it as much as he wanted. He could repeat as many times as necessary that it was a mistake. But deep down, he had already lost that battle. Ethan pulls away, trying to keep things professional. But when she finds herself in danger again, he realizes that denying what he feels is no longer an option. Meanwhile, the threat against her reaches a new level, and now there's no escaping. Ethan avoided me for the next 2 days. He kept his distance in the car, avoided looking directly at me, and only spoke when absolutely necessary. It was as if he were trying to erase what had happened that night. But I knew. Did you know that he felt that as much as I did? He knew that for a moment he forgot all the reasons to keep me away, and that scared him. The tension between us grew by the minute. I was purposefully testing his limits, a casual touch, a lingering glance, and I could see the way his jaw clenched, how his fingers tightened around the steering wheel. He wanted to resist, but he couldn't help but feel. And then, the danger came back to remind us that we didn't have time for games. I was leaving my father's company building when it happened. The car that was supposed to be waiting for me had vanished. My phone rang, an unknown number flashing on the screen. "Do you think he can protect you forever?" The voice on the other end was distorted, cold. Fear hit me before I could react. I turned to look for Ethan, but in that second, everything happened too fast. A black car mounted the sidewalk, screeching to a halt. A door opened. Someone tried to pull me, and then I heard the gunshot. The glass of the car shattered beside me. The impact was loud enough to make me recoil, my heart racing. Ethan was there. He pulled me back, his body placing itself between me and the danger like a human shield. His eyes were dark, filled with fury, and when he drew his gun, the car sped away down the street. The silence that followed was deafening. My breathing was erratic. My hands shook. Ethan turned to me, and before I could say anything, he held my face with both hands, his eyes insane with intensity. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" His voice was loaded with something I had never heard before. Something that wasn't just professional concern. I shook my head, unable to speak. He pulled me into him. It was instinctive. A reflex of fear, of relief, of something he could no longer hide. My arms wrapped around his body, and I felt the tension in him, the way his breath was heavy against my hair. And then he whispered, "I swear I will never let anything happen to you." It was a promise, but I knew it meant more. He was fighting against it, against me. But in that moment, holding me as if his life depended on it, he realized he could no longer deny it. And worse, I knew it too. Ethan discovers that the danger comes from within. Someone close to her is involved. He decides to act alone, leaving her furious. But when he goes out to confront the enemy, something goes terribly wrong, and he doesn't come back. Ethan was different. He had always been attentive, always meticulous. But now there was something more. A veiled tension, a look loaded with something that felt like fear. He had discovered something, and he didn't want to tell me. "What is it?" I asked, crossing my arms as he checked the security of the rooftop for the third time that night. Nothing. He didn't look at me. Lies. He stopped, exhaling slowly, his shoulders tight. The attack today wasn't random. His voice came out low, loaded. They knew where you would be. As if they had inside information. My breath caught in my throat. "What are you saying?" He turned to me, his blue eyes sharp as blades. "I'm saying that someone close to you is involved in this." My stomach churned. The people closest to me were my father, my assistant, and a few friends. None of them would do something like that. None of them would sell me out to whoever was behind these threats, right? "I will find out who it is," Ethan continued, his tone dark. "But I need to do this alone." "Alone?" My voice came out louder than I intended. He didn't answer immediately. And that's when I understood. "You already know who it is." My throat dried up. "And you're going after that person now?" Ethan didn't confirm, but the silence was answer enough. "No." I crossed my arms, firm. "You're not excluding me from this." He closed his eyes for a second, as if gathering patience. "This is not an option. Ethan, it's over." He cut me off, his voice low but lethal. "You're going to stay here, and I will handle this." I knew arguing with him would be pointless, so I did the only thing left to me. "What if something happens to you?" My voice cracked, and I hated it. He blinked slowly, and for the first time, let the truth show. He knew this was a possibility. He knew he was putting his own life at risk. I took a step forward, my hand almost touching his arm, but he stepped away before I could. "You need to trust me," he murmured. "I trust you." I swallowed hard. "But I don't want to lose you." His eyes shone with something I couldn't decipher, and then, before I could say anything else, he walked out the door. And this time, he didn't come back. The news hit like a punch. Ethan was shot while protecting her. In the hospital, he holds her hand and whispers that she has always been the only thing that really mattered to him. But will it be too late? The news came like a punch to the gut. He was shot. My mind refused to process the words. My body froze. My heart skipped a beat and then raced as if trying to compensate for the sudden collapse inside me. I was at the rooftop when I received the call. The voice on the other end was cold, informative. "Ethan Carter was shot twice while protecting your father. He's in the hospital. His condition is critical." The phone slipped from my fingers. I ran out. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and despair. My heels clicked against the porcelain floor as I rushed through the halls, ignoring the voices around me, ignoring everything except finding Ethan. The image of him bloodied, fallen, invaded my mind before I even saw him. My chest tightened. I had never been afraid of losing anything. I grew up surrounded by power, security, people who made sure I always had everything I wanted. But now, for the first time, I realized I could lose the only thing that truly mattered. Ethan. When I finally reached the room, I stopped at the door. He was there, pale. Tubes connected to his body, monitors blinking rhythmically beside the bed. Every fiber inside me broke at the sight of him like that. I approached slowly, the knot in my throat tightening with each step. "Ethan!" My voice came out broken. His eyes were closed. His breathing was irregular. I sat down beside the bed and held his hand. It was warm. "You promised." My voice was a trembling whisper. "You said you would never let anything happen to me, but I never asked you to sacrifice yourself." My tears fell before I could hold them back. I had never cried for anyone. I had never allowed myself to feel something I couldn't control. But with Ethan, nothing was ever under control. I don't know how long I stayed there. His fingers moved under mine, weak but real. My heart raced. Then, slowly, his eyes opened. That intense blue, now clouded by pain, met mine. "You're crying." His voice was hoarse, weak. A nervous laugh escaped my lips. "And you're dying." He closed his eyes for a second, as if gathering strength was a monumental effort. When he opened them again, there was something in them that completely disarmed me. "I always—" He paused, his breathing faltering. His gaze locked onto mine, intense, true. "You have always been the only thing that really mattered to me." My heart stopped. The breath caught in my throat. Because in that moment, I realized I felt the same, that I had always felt that way, but what if it was too late to say it? Days later, she refuses to let him go. When Ethan finally wakes up, he sees the tears in her eyes and realizes he can finally admit what he has always hidden. The kiss that happens now is not forbidden, it is a promise. But will the world allow them to be together? The following days were a blur of doctors coming in and out, machines beeping, whispered voices that always seemed to say the worst could still happen. But I didn't leave his side. I refused to sleep anywhere but that uncomfortable chair next to the bed. I refused to listen when my dad said I should go home to rest. I refused to accept the possibility of losing Ethan, because now I knew. I knew that if he went, he would take a part of me with him. On the morning of the third day, I felt a movement. My head was resting beside his hand when I felt his fingers move, weak against my skin. My heart raced. I straightened up immediately, my eyes finding his. Those blue eyes, now tired, but still the same. He blinked slowly as if getting used to the light. When he finally focused on me, his expression was one of relief. "You're still here." His voice was hoarse, low. My lips trembled. "I never left." A heavy silence settled between us. I wanted to say so much. I wanted to scream. I wanted to curse him for throwing himself in front of that bullet. I wanted to ask why he thought my life was worth more than his. But in the end, all I did was hold his hand tighter. And then finally, I said what I should have said before. "I love you, Ethan." It was simple, honest, no beating around the bush. His eyes closed for a second, as if those words were a punch as strong as the bullets he took. When he opened them again, I saw it. He felt the same. He had always felt that way, but instead of words, Ethan pulled me close. With effort, with pain. But he pulled me. And when our lips touched, there was no more doubt. The kiss was not forbidden. It was not a mistake, it was a promise. One that no matter what happened outside, no matter what the world tried to take from us, we would choose to fight. Together. So what did you think of this story? Would you have done anything differently in her place? Let me know in the comments.